In the last episode of EuropaFirst, I said that the EU doesn't care about democracy if it really wants something. An example was that the EU has tools to stop populist and far-right parties from winning elections. You need to realize that if the EU wants something, they do not care about democracy, whether it is this or interfering in countries' elections to stop far-right parties from winning.
We'll see. If things go in a difficult direction, I've spoken about Hungary and Poland, we have tools.
And I said that without really being sure or having concrete evidence, but I was proven right by a report from the US House of Representatives that the EU has used the Digital Services Act, which was passed in 2022, to censor populist and far-right parties on social media, thus interfering in elections. They have done that 8 times until now, twice in Ireland and the Netherlands, once in France, Romania, Moldova, and my country Slovakia. Let's look into the Digital Services Act first before going into what happened. The Digital Services Act, short DSA, is a regulation that aims to create a safer online environment for consumers and companies in the European Union. It practically includes every website, app, or search engine whose target customers are in the European Union. While it aims to set clear rules and establish transparency, it also aims to deal with illegal content, including hate speech and disinformation. And this is where our story starts. Because the European Commission, which is responsible for enforcement, used this regulation to tell big social media platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and Meta to censor and regulate conservative accounts, even though they voiced legitimate opinions and didn't violate community guidelines. An example of this false labeling as hate speech was in the 2023 Slovak elections, where widely accepted statements in Slovakia, such as there are only 2 genders and we need to stop the sexualization of children, were labeled by the European Commission as hate speech. They created a list of 63 problematic accounts which had a following up to 120,000 followers that needed to be censored, just days before the election. For my Slovak followers, I will do a detailed video regarding this topic on Thursday, so subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Another example I'm sure many of you have heard of were the Romanian elections in December of 2024, where the far-right candidate Călin Georgescu won the first round of the election. Because this was such an unexpected win, the mainstream media created the narrative that Russia interfered in this election through TikTok by pushing Georgescu's videos. But the report from the House Judiciary Committee found that the opposite was true. Not only did Russia not interfere, but the EU did by censoring Georgescu and pushing the candidate opposing him. What happened afterwards is that Georgescu's win was cancelled by Romania's Supreme Court and new elections took place where Nicu Șordan, a pro-EU centrist, won. This pattern can be found in most of these affected countries, notably Moldova and France. But what does this mean for the future? This is a huge thing because it shows the power of the EU through the Digital Services Act. Social media platforms risk fines of 6% of their global annual turnover if they do not comply with the DSA regulations. For those who don't know, the global annual turnover is the money a company makes worldwide before any taxes and expenses. And the companies that are affected function worldwide. This means that a company like TikTok will rather delete content that could be seen as a violation of the DSA, even if it doesn't violate its community guidelines, than pay a huge fine. So free speech would practically be censored worldwide. This is the reason why the US even made this report, because free speech, protected under the First Amendment of the US Constitution, was censored by the DSA, which should only apply to the EU. This is called the Brussels effect. The Brussels effect is when a regulation originating from the EU becomes the global norm. This is a clear overreach by the European Commission and a threat to free speech in my opinion. Since hate speech and disinformation have no precise, universally agreed upon definitions, efforts to censor them inevitably leave us vulnerable to abuse by those in power who can weaponize vague rules against their opponents. I'm Slovak Raper and I'll see you next week.